Vlogging on the Canon M50 Mark II is a very interesting idea. Canon's M series of mirrorless cameras are the smallest in Canon's lineup with interchangeable lenses, and the Canon M50 Mark II is the latest version of the #1 camera in this series, the original Canon M50. When paired with the right lenses and accessories, this camera can capture beautiful, professional-looking shots of anything at all, and it can absolutely nail vlogging shots. The ability to carry just one camera that acts as your vlogging camera and your B-roll camera is awesome for anyone who is traveling or just wants a super minimized gear carry. The Canon M50 Mark II is a great vlogging camera for beginners to start out with, especially if they are looking to learn and grow into it. And it's also fantastic for advanced creatives looking for a less intense camera to carry in those trickier or riskier situations. Hello my friends, and welcome to part 2 of my series all about this camera. I'm Alicia May Hurte, and today we are talking about vlogging on the Canon M50 Mark II. In this video, I'll fill you in on any differences between the original Canon M50 and the Canon M50 Mark II, especially those that apply to vlogging, and I'll also share lots of test vlogging shots from the first time I took it out on the streets of Miami to some adventures around Pensacola, Florida, here where I live, where I test new features and fill you in on what to consider while vlogging on the Canon M50 Mark II. So if you're an M50 user or plan to become one, then subscribe to this channel because a lot of it is dedicated to this camera. And if you are really looking for a deep dive into using the Canon M50, then jump on my email list via the link below, because very soon I will have some in-depth information going out that will really push you to the next level of using your Canon M50, either version of it. Okay, vlogging on the Canon M50 Mark II, or the original, is and always has been fantastic thanks to this amazing variable angle flip out screen. You just can't beat this. This is the one thing that keeps the M50 on top in popularity over the Canon M6 Mark II, which does have better specs overall, although a less desirable flip up screen. The beauty of a variable angle screen like this is not just that it flips out for a vlogging shot, it's that it flips into every angle imaginable, so you could shoot down and still see the screen perfectly, or up and still see the screen perfectly. So it's great for photography, great for vlogging, just a perfect design. Of course, many of us were hoping that the Canon M50 Mark II would be a bit more like the M6 Mark II on specs, but to some mild disappointment, it really wasn't. But still, the M50 has always been a great camera. It's just what you need, nothing more. And now the M50 Mark II is a slightly better camera and still at relatively low cost. If it got any better, it would probably have to cost more, and a lot of people don't want that. So let's take a look at a list of the upgrades made to the Canon M50 Mark II, and then let's notice that most of these upgrades actually apply directly to vlogging. So we've got the front record button, which was clearly added specifically for vloggers. So now you can just tap record on the touchscreen as it is facing you. Very convenient. It's got a visible audio level indicator, which I think is huge for vlogging. The original M50 only offered a peek at this if you toggled over to this full info screen, which you would probably not likely do. But on the M50 Mark II, you can see your audio levels on the screen. That includes your shot. And this is excellent because while you're vlogging, you can kind of keep an eye on your audio levels, especially if you're worried about your mic for some reason. And hopefully you can catch any sudden audio fail or peaking in sound. That's when it's just way too loud, and then you can stop and correct the problem before you continue on. It's so awful when you get to your vlogging footage and realize that your mic failed and you didn't have any audio whatsoever. The Mark II also now has eye tracking in video mode when the original only had face tracking. Now this can be very important when using a shallow depth of field because that focus is very precise and the eye is the most important place on the face. So if you had a shallow depth of field and the lens was really close, it could, in theory, be focusing on your nose, but blowing out the rest of your face, and the eye AF in video is going to lock it right in on the eye and not even, and prioritize that over the rest of the face. Canon has also said that the autofocus on the Mark II is improved all around, with the ability to track faces faster and further away. Although the M50 original had amazing autofocus, I had no problem with it. I guess it's good that this is improved, and we will test more of this later. The M50 Mark II also has 4K time-lapse as opposed to just 1080. This is great for vlogging because a time-lapse is a beautiful way to establish a sense of place or a transition from day to night literally, and shooting a time lapse in 4K means you can do much more with it, such as add a little motion zoom in on the shot and maintain clarity thanks to the higher resolution. Now, the clean HDMI output doesn't apply much to vlogging, but it was a major upgrade to the M50 Mark II. This means that you can plug an HDMI cable into the camera and project your screen onto an external monitor while actually transmitting both picture and audio, which translates to the fact that you can now live stream to YouTube without any extra software in between. Look how clean it is. And now let's go to Miami for some actual vlogging on the Canon M50 Mark II. So this little girl's all ready to go. Are you excited to go explore? You got all your jewelry on? All right, vlogging on the Canon M50 Mark II. I am in Miami. It's a perfect place to kind of give you an example of what it might be like to actually be vlogging on the Canon M50 Mark II. And I've got the whole setup right now. So I've got the Zhiyun Weebill S gimbal, I've got the Rode Wireless Go microphone, I've got the Freewell variable ND filter, which is nice because I can just twist it if I need a little exposure change. Yeah, it's great to have this whole setup. It definitely gives you the advantage of extra stabilization when you're like actually walking around and things like that. And using the joystick, adjusting the exposure. These are all things you need to be doing to get that perfect shot as you're walking and talking in a vlog. So vlogging can be, whoa, as you're stepping in high heels too. Vlogging can be very tricky if you really are going for the full, you know, like perfection on shots. And if you're like me and like to get a little dressed up in certain travel situations. So today I'm just going to be exploring a little bit with my family, and let's just see what we can get into and what I can tell you guys as I go. Okay, voiceover here, because unfortunately I had a total mic fail, which rarely happens with the Rode Wireless Go, but I did completely forget to charge the battery. And this would have been the perfect situation for me to utilize that audio level indicator on the flip out screen to correct the fail early on, rather than just blindly continuing with no audio. I think I've been vlogging on the original M50 for so long, I've not yet trained myself to keep an eye on that, but I definitely will from now on. But at least you can still see what the vlogging shot looks like and how using a gimbal really adds to the stabilization and smoothness, which is nice in a place like this where there's a ton of visual details and texture. But unfortunately, this is all I have from Miami, but don't worry, I'll go back soon. All right, here I am back home in Pensacola, Florida, vlogging again on the M50 Mark II with a few more careful considerations applied. The first one being that I am definitely keeping an eye on the audio level indicators. I've got Caden filming me here, and it's a very windy day if you haven't noticed, so at least I know what's going on with the audio levels, and I do see it almost peaking a little bit, but it's way better knowing what's going on than just not knowing at all. And I'm definitely using that front screen recording button. I realized that even though I've got a front screen recording button here, I realized that it's just a lot easier because this is already where I'm looking. So hitting on and off via that button is just a whole lot easier. I'm also keeping this vlogging situation very streamlined and simple by using the switch pod. So this is just a very simple handheld, very streamlined, handheld tripod. It's cool because it opens and closes very easily. It also gives you that little bit extra length from your lens, which is nice. And this is amazing because I can easily just slip it into a purse. And I do want you to see the difference between vlogging handheld on something that's not a gimbal versus vlogging on a gimbal. It absolutely can be done without a gimbal, but careful considerations applied. I would be holding the camera with a very steady arm, and I'd also be keeping my core very tight and just being very aware, keeping my shoulders tight, just being very aware of her around the water, but being very aware of the image shake because this lens doesn't have image stabilization, and I don't generally turn the image stabilization on in the Canon M50 Mark II. So, but with the lens wide enough like this, a wider lens, you don't need as much image stabilization because it's just going to be naturally more stabilized. So I want you to see the difference between vlogging on this versus vlogging on a gimbal. All right, so here I am walking with the switch pod on the M50 Mark II. No stabilization in the lens, no stabilization in the camera, just doing my thing vlogging. And I want you to understand that camera shake is something that will happen in vlogs, and it's not the end of the world. It's not a huge deal as long as there's not too much of it. So as long as you keep those walking and talking clips short, You don't always need a gimbal. Your footage is definitely leveled up the look of a gimbal, what that can provide, but you know, just be careful, be mindful, and you can definitely vlog with the Canon M50 Mark II or Mark I. And if you are vlogging on something like the switch pod that flips out to a tripod, one way to avoid that constant camera shake, even for a vlogging shot, is to find a place to sit. Open it up, make a little tripod out of it, and you've got your like situation where you can talk to the camera where it's completely stabilized. But if staying steady is something you absolutely can't do, then vlogging on a gimbal with the Canon M50 is absolutely possible. So now I'm gonna switch over the camera to my Zhiyun Weebill S gimbal. I'm actually gonna put a longer lens on it and get some of the B-roll shots that I might cut in to a vlog in between the vlogging shots, so you get the big picture feel. But before I drop any more M50 Mark II footage on you, I want you guys to understand that the shots you've seen in this video so far are well supplemented by additional gear. So this is the stuff that really makes a difference in the shot, and I highly recommend using some, if not all of it. So in the very next video in this series, I will walk you through my entire setup of gear that I use with the Canon M50 to get the best possible vlogging shots and cinematic style B-roll. And then in the next video in the series, I'm going to show you exactly how to use your manual camera settings on the Canon M50 Mark II to also get the best shot. So it's kind of like a combination of that knowledge and skill set using your manual camera settings with the additional gear to really take this like small, lightweight, entry-level, low-cost camera and turn it into a cinematic beast and an ultimate vlogging camera. You guys can do it. It's not as hard as it sounds. So stay tuned for those next 2 videos. Jump on my email list so you get the notifications. Subscribe if you haven't already. Let me know in the comments any questions you have about the Canon M50 Mark II, and I will see you guys in the very next video. Bye.